Welcome to Deep Treks. I'm Dan Shipton, and this is a Deep Treks devotional. This week's devotion will be focused on the wise still seek him. And we are focused on the fact that the wise men came, as we call them, the Magi came, and we're going to look at who the Magi were, and we're going to look at what it means to seek wisdom in the Lord this week as we look at this study together. Welcome to Deep Treks. I'm Dan Shipton, and this is a Deep Treks devotion. We're glad you can join us. This is the second edition of our Wise Still Seek Him. And today we're looking at the fact that wisdom of God is beyond human knowledge or senses. We're going to be looking in 1 Corinthians chapter 18, if you want to turn over there with us today. And we're going to look at these scriptures and remind ourselves of our main focus of the week, which is to look at the Magi, the wise men who came in Matthew chapter 2. They came and they were in search of the Messiah, the Christ child. They were told that he would be born in Bethlehem by the religious establishment. Herod wanted to know more, it told us. That's what we learned yesterday. Herod, the king, wanted to know more. But why did he want to know? Well, that's what we're going to look at today. So I want us to see a few things. First of all, let's look at the passage that we have in front of us in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, beginning at verse 18. It says, "For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through the wisdom. It pleased God through folly of the what we preached to save those who believed. For the Jews demand signs, the Greeks seek wisdom, and we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and a folly to the Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ is the power of God, the wisdom of God, for the foolishness of the God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men." That's the whole importance of what happened with the wise men. They were intelligent, they were smart, and something told them internally they needed to seek God. They needed to seek this gift that God was giving to the world. And the sad thing is, we see what comes out of that. Herod is there and he wants to know, who is this child that's born? He wants to know where they are. So he inquires as to when the star was to appear. That's what it tells us in Matthew chapter 2 at the beginning of the chapter. And it tells us the religious leaders also were curious. They said, well, there's a verse in the Bible that says he's going to be born in Bethlehem. So that's where you should look. And Herod inquired of them privately of when the star appeared and told them to come back and tell him, where is this child that I may go worship? Well, here's the thing we got to understand. Herod was an appointed king of the Jews, appointed by Rome. He was not the legitimate king of the Jews. So anyone claiming that a king of the Jews was born and was of the Jewish line of David would have had a right and heir to the throne, and it would have caused chaos within the entire Roman Empire. And it would have caused chaos to Herod. Herod was a ruthless ruler. He killed members of his own family to protect his throne and to rise to power. His children were no better. We know one of his children, another Herod that came along later, would be the one to help crucify Christ. He would try him, then send him back to the Romans and let him be crucified. Well, to that Herod and to the Herod of Jesus' birth time, both of them were ruthless people. They killed people, they took what they wanted, and they kept themselves protected. And so Herod didn't want to know where this Messiah was. He wanted to know where the Messiah was so he could get rid of him. They didn't come back and tell him because God warned in a dream not to do so. But the truth of the matter is, Herod really didn't want to do anything but protect himself, protect his power. He was wise in his own eyes, but he had no wisdom of God about him. The story, sadly, is that The religious authorities weren't too far behind him. You see, the authorities within Jerusalem itself really had a lot of corruption. They were taking advantage of people, they were taking money from people, and they had negotiated with Rome to kind of leave them alone as long as they didn't cause too much trouble and they kept the people in order. Just leave us alone. And Herod had this little agreement with them that he would build the temple and make it richer and make the people who were in charge of the religious standing richer. So they really didn't want things to get shaken up either. But someone along the way was willing enough to say, well, this child's supposed to be born in Bethlehem. If you're going to find him, that's where you'll find him. I don't think they really thought anything was going to come of it. Now, we do know Herod would come later on because they didn't return and he would kill the children of Bethlehem. And there's going to be people that are going to argue, since we're deep treks and we get deep sometimes, there's going to be people out there that are going to argue and say there is no evidence in history of this mass killing of children in Judea. You're right, there isn't. We're talking about a small town, a town of less than probably 2,000 people. If you think of a town even today with less than 2,000 people, how many children are born in a 2-year time? You're talking probably less than 50, 60 kids, maybe 100 if you really push it. That's not a lot of children. So it's just a blip on the historical map and means absolutely nothing to anyone. Herod still wanted them dead. To make sure he had his throne in protected, he would kill off anyone, including all the children under the age of 2. Why under the age of 2? Because he asked when the star had appeared. Now we get into a little bit of a game here because everybody says, well, Jesus wasn't really born on December 25th and the wise men came 2 years later. There's nothing in the Bible that says they came 2 years later. We know they didn't come to the stable on the night he was born. But we don't know when the star appeared. Did it appear when he was born? Or did it appear when he was conceived, as many people believe? You see, that's why Herod doesn't know the truth either. Herod is questioning all this. So he goes back 2 years and says, I'm going to kill all the children under the age of 2, because that's when the star appeared. Jesus was likely over the age of 1. Why were they still in Bethlehem and not back in Nazareth? Well, you traveled where work was at, and you didn't travel all the time. It was the hometown of both Mary and Joseph by tradition. Of course, they weren't living there when they met, but it was where both their families came from. So there's no reason for them not to stay there and do work there. So they would stay there. And if you go on in the story in chapter 2 of Matthew, you realize they're told to move on and go to Egypt while Herod goes through and kills off the children to protect the Messiah, to protect Christ. Now, this is all a lot of information for us. Paul, in his scripture that we read today, tells us about wisdom. And he says godly wisdom is not the same as human wisdom. Humans think they know things, but God's wisdom is above and beyond all that we could understand, all that we could ever know. And the truth is, we often think we're wise in our own eyes, like Herod. We think we're wise in the ways we're going, like the religious leaders. But in time, we realize our wisdom means nothing. And this whole message of the cross of Christ and the birth of Christ in a manger all sounds silly to the world around us. But in truth, that's what God does. He chooses to use foolish things of the world to outdo the wise things of men. So I want to ask us as we close today, are we wise in our own eyes? Is our wisdom focused on God? Even when he doesn't make sense in human terms, are we staying focused on him? I hope you are. And I hope that you are letting God bless you and that you're growing in him. Think about these things today as you trek on this journey of life with him.
That's today's Devo on Deep Treks. No matter how deep the questions or dark the doubts, there's always a path forward. Reach out at deeptreks.com with prayer needs or topics you'd like us to explore. Keep trekking. Renewal is never far away. Be blessed on the journey and bless others along the way.